Darling, tell me something. How many times this week have you said sorry for something that was never actually wrong? Sorry for texting back a little late. Sorry for asking a fair question in a meeting. Sorry for wanting more. More money, more freedom, more room to breathe. Sorry simply for growing up and taking up space. I've watched women do this in every century I've lived through, and darling, I've lived through quite a few. The dress changes, the apology never does. Welcome back to Stories in Slow English. I'm Cleopatra, and today we're talking about something I know intimately, ambition and the strange guilt that so many women carry around it, like an extra piece of jewelry nobody asked them to wear. Before we go further, if this is your first time here, press subscribe. Stay with me a moment longer, and I promise it will be worth it. Now, let's talk about ambition. Ambition simply means the desire to achieve something significant, a goal, a dream, a version of your life you can be proud of. That's all it is, not a scandal, not a character flaw, a desire. And yet, so many women learn early to shrink that desire before anyone else can shrink it for them. A girl says she wants to be the boss one day, and the room smiles in that particular way, amused, a little uncomfortable. A woman negotiates her salary, and suddenly she's difficult. A woman says no to a request that isn't hers to carry, and she's cold. So she learns the safest sentence in the language, "I'm sorry." I ruled Egypt at a time when a woman holding real power was considered at best an exception, and at worst a threat. I understood very quickly that my ambition made people nervous, not because it was dangerous, but because it was unfamiliar. People rarely fear ambition itself, they fear what it means when a woman stops asking permission for it. Psychologists call part of this pattern the likability penalty. Research in social psychology has repeatedly shown that as a woman's competence and success rise, her perceived likability can quietly fall, while for men, competence and likability tend to rise together. The same behavior, negotiating firmly, speaking directly, claiming credit, gets read completely differently depending on who's doing it. That isn't a personal failure, that's a pattern, a very old and very human one. And once you can see it, it loses a great deal of its power over you. So where does the apologizing come from? Mostly from a mix of two very old lessons. The first, don't take up too much space, because taking up space might make someone else uncomfortable. The second, your worth depends on being agreeable. Put those two lessons together for 20 or 30 years, and you get a grown woman apologizing for asking for a raise she has clearly earned. Here's what fascinates me. Ambitious women rarely apologize because they believe they've done something wrong. They apologize because they've been trained to expect a small punishment for wanting something, a raised eyebrow, a whispered comment, a slightly colder tone. So they apologize first as a kind of shield. Sorry to bother you. Sorry, this might be a silly question. Sorry for asking twice. Believe me, I know what it's like to rule an empire, and I never once opened a negotiation with "sorry to interrupt." Cleopatra apologizing before making a demand, the Nile would have frozen first. Now, I want to be honest with you, because that's the only way I know how to speak. This isn't about becoming cold or hard or pretending you don't care about people. Warmth and ambition are not opposites. You can be generous and still ask for what you deserve. You can be kind and still say no. The goal was never to stop caring about others. It was to stop treating your own needs as something that requires an apology. Let's make this practical, because I do love a good, useful reflection. First, notice the reflex. For 1 week, simply notice every time sorry leaves your mouth for something that isn't actually an apology. Sorry, can I ask something? Sorry, I have a different opinion. You don't have to change anything yet. Awareness alone changes the pattern faster than people expect. Second, replace the apology with a statement. Instead of sorry for the long message, try thank you for reading this. Instead of sorry, but I disagree, try I see this differently and here's why. The words are small. The shift in how you're heard is not small at all. Third, separate ambition from arrogance, because society loves to blur that line for women specifically. Arrogance says, I'm better than you. Ambition says, I want to grow, and that has nothing to do with you at all. One is about comparison, the other is about direction. You are allowed to move forward without diminishing anyone else in the process. Fourth, let yourself want things out loud, not quietly, not if that's okay with everyone, but clearly. I want this promotion. I want this relationship to be equal. I want a life that feels spacious, not one that feels like a constant apology for existing. Saying it out loud is often the bravest part. Let me tell you a small story, one I've seen play out so many times, it almost feels like watching the same scene with different lighting. A woman finally sets a boundary. She says, I can't take on this extra project, or I need to leave work on time today. And then right after comes the automatic apology. Sorry, I know this is inconvenient. Sorry, I hope this doesn't disappoint you. As if protecting her own time were an inconvenience she personally caused the world. Boundaries are not walls built to keep people out. They're simply the shape of your own life, where it begins and where someone else's begins. You wouldn't apologize for the shape of a room. You don't need to apologize for the shape of your limits either. And then there's money. Oh, money brings out a particularly stubborn kind of guilt. Women are so often taught to feel almost embarrassed by financial ambition, as though wanting to be paid well or wanting to build wealth makes them somehow less warm, less generous, less good. Meanwhile, nobody blinks when a man mentions he's negotiating a bigger contract. By Pharaoh's beard, the double standard is ancient and it is exhausting. Here's the truth I'd like you to carry with you. Money is not the opposite of kindness. A woman with resources can support her family, help a friend in crisis, fund the dream she once only whispered about. Financial ambition, stripped of all the shame society wraps around it, is simply another form of self-respect. You are allowed to want to be paid what you're worth, and you never owe anyone an apology for the number on your paycheck. There's a particular kind of guilt reserved for women who succeed, what many people now call success guilt. It's the quiet discomfort of earning more than a partner, of outgrowing a friend group, of walking into a room your family never imagined for you. Nobody warns you about this part. Nobody tells you that growth sometimes feels like grief, because you're leaving behind a version of yourself, and sometimes people you love, who were comfortable with your smaller shape. Here is what history taught me across every century I quietly observed. The world does not actually collapse when a woman becomes powerful. It only feels that way to the people standing closest to her old, smaller self. Give them time. Some will grow with you, some won't. Both outcomes are survivable. I remember long ago sitting with advisors who were far more comfortable when I asked for their opinion than when I simply announced my decision. The room's temperature changed depending on whether I phrased my ambition as a question or a statement. I noticed it then, and women notice it now, in boardrooms, in family dinners, in group chats. The moment your certainty stops sounding like a request, something in the room shifts. That shift is not proof you did something wrong, it's simply proof that you stopped asking for permission you never needed in the first place. History doesn't repeat itself, darling. People just keep making the same choice in nicer shoes. And the choice, generation after generation, is this: does she shrink to be liked, or does she grow and let likability be someone else's problem to sort out? I chose growth. I'd like you to choose it too. Even queens sometimes make dramatic decisions before breakfast, and even queens have had to learn, slowly and sometimes painfully, that their crown was never something to apologize for wearing. I want you to imagine something with me for a moment. Imagine the woman you'll be in 10 years, the one who negotiated boldly, who set the boundary, who took the opportunity instead of talking herself out of it. She is not asking your permission to exist fully. She already knows her ambition was never the problem. Let today be the day you start becoming her, one unapologetic sentence at a time. Some things never change, only the outfits do. And darling, this season's outfit is confidence, worn without apology. If today's reflection meant something to you, give this video a like and tell me in the comments, what is one thing you're done apologizing for? I read every single one, and I promise I take your stories with me. And if you'd like to keep this conversation going, I have more stories waiting for you on confidence, on boundaries, on the quiet strength it takes to simply become yourself. Come find me in the next episode.